Hey, this is Fred from the House of Fly, bringing you the first fly tying video on our rebranded channel. Today I'm going to be tying a little streamer. This one is essentially a color variation and a little riff off of one of my favorite trout spey flies that we've called the Montana Intruder. And we're going to just tie this in a different, much darker color scheme. And then for the head of this fly, rather than using the Senyo's laser dub to build out the head, I'm actually going to cheat code it and use one of these beautiful Pugliese streamer brushes. So it makes it super easy to complete, really nice finish to this fly. So I'm going to start out thread basing, and on this one I'm going big on my thread. I'm using 210, and I like doing that because I like to just be able to cover that shank really quickly. And most of the materials that we're tying down here don't require a lot of wraps or layers, so I can get away with the thicker thread. So we're tying on a Waddington shank, and this is a 25 millimeter shank. I generally want this fly to be roughly 3 inches long, and this shank is just perfect for that. And then on Intruder wire here, I've got a little, this is a no escape hook from Owner. You can use whatever hook you like. I like this one. It's barbless and it really seems to hold fish quite well. So I've got it on my wire, and I'm going to lash that down. And as I lash it down, I want to make sure that it's going to be relatively straight in orientation. It does have a little offset, but I can kind of just tug and squeeze on it as I lash it down and make sure it rides straight there, which it's looking good. And then I'm going to really pull on this thread and get that thing squeezed down. And there's no way the trout's going to pull that off of there. You could go ahead and glue it, but I've never had a trout pull that off, even some pretty good ones. So then we're going to do some eyes, and I'm going to put those here on the bottom. One thing I like about tying on these shanks is you essentially have the double wire. So when you tie your eyes on, it's got a nice base, and so they will not turn or twist. They're going to stay locked in. So you can simply just cross wrap them a few times in each direction and they're going nowhere. Those are locked in. Always want to make sure they're square to your front. So we're good to go, ready to tie the next stage. So for the back end, the beginning of the building on the shank here, I've got a little bit of Arizona semi-seal, and this is black and red. And I'm just going to tie this in. I want a little bump in the back. Tie that tail there, and then I'm going to wrap a few turns forward and then just fold this right back over itself. Just making a little bump here, and that's going to support my tail and give it a little more splay out in an Intruder style. So for the tail here, we're going to start out with some black Krelex, and I want this to be fairly sparse. 8-10 fibers is all you need. They're going to be doubled over, so whatever you grab, you're going to double the quantity. I just like to fold that around my thread, and then I'm going to tie that right up the bend there, the bulge. And then on my length, this works out pretty perfectly on my vise, right about where it bends, but I'm going to make that tail about 2 inches long. And then I'm going to splay these fibers out just a little bit around the shank. Just kind of tug them. Gives a little more flow when that fly is swimming. And then to fill in the body space, just a little black polar chenille here. I tie that in behind the eyes and then back up the bump there. Then I'm going to bring my thread forward and go ahead and use my bobbin cradle and palmer this on up to the eyes. I like doing this because I can really get a good tug and pull that in there nice and tight as I'm wrapping it. You can fuss with it as you wrap a little bit, although it's rolling out there pretty nice and clean. I'm going to take that right up to the eyes, and then I'm either even going to get another extra turn there just to build up a little bit more bulk right behind the eyes. And we'll get that lashed off. All right, and then we're going to lay in some copper Acrylex. Something about the black and copper with a little bit of red combination really seems to be a good dark day, dark season fly. This works really well in the winter, works really well in the summer on darker days. So I'm going to fold that right around my thread and lay this over for a top wing. Get a couple wraps behind the eyes. And then I'm going to measure this out about a 1/4 inch or so shorter than my tail length. 1/4 to a 1/2 inch. You just want to stagger your length a little bit, and then I'll just kind of pull those out just a little. I'm going to bring my thread back in front of the eyes again, and then we're going to top that with just a little bit more black. And then I'm going to trim that just a little bit shorter than my copper. And we'll do the same thing, just kind of splay it just a little bit around the tie-in point. You can kind of take your fingernail and just push down. That will kind of push it side to side in that thread. And then give it one more good lash to hold it tight. And then to finish it off, we're going to grab our streamer brush. And this is a 2.5 inch. This one is black, and it's got little red, little blue. I think there's even a little tiny bit of UV in there. It just has a real good look to it. So what I like to do on the top here is lay the tip of my wire right in front of my eyes. And then I'm just going to actually figure 8 over that wire a little bit, just make sure it's well captured. And then once around the base, and then she's ready to wrap forward. I want to get one full turn behind the eyes, and then another 1/2 turn, and I'm going to bring that in underneath. Make sure all my fibers are going back, and then we're going to finish it off in the front with a full turn, and then I'm going to go around again and get another 1/2 turn to the bottom, and that will kind of fill in that space under the eyes. And then I need to find my tie-in point, so I'm just going to grab my bodkin and kind of work that to where I can get my thread in there. And I'm just going to go one time over the wire, give it a good lockdown. Then I'm going to fold the brush back and start building a head. And as I build the head, and I've got this 210 thread, I'm just going to force backwards toward my wire, and that gives me good locking. And I can come in there, and I always take a cheap pair of scissors, or actually not cheap, but old and worn out. I'm going to come in there and use those to trim off my wire. And then where that little nub is, I can come back and just get a couple more thread wraps to clean that up. And we're ready to whip it off. You can certainly grab your whip finish tool at this point, but I'm just going to go ahead and do my fingers, and there she is. Montana Intruder in the black, red, and copper color. So this thing has a really good little minnow profile. When that brush, those fibers are pulling through the water, it really tapers down, has a great minnow profile. And then that Krelex in the back is going to give you a bunch of action. It's going to have a lot of swim, and then you've got your mix of a couple colors. So this does really well for trout in the darker weather. Then one other tool that I've been playing with, and if you notice, I don't know if it's close enough to see, but I've got a couple little strands of that brush that I just missed. They got spun out there, and I could certainly come in there with my scissors and clean them up. But we just started carrying these new cotter tools from Hairline. So I'm going to come in here and just fire that up and just pop those suckers right off. That just makes a real nice clean head, and then when you're ready to apply your head cement or your UV, you don't have a bunch of little fibers poking out. And I like this to have a notable red head on it. So there we have it. Little Montana Intruder, dark phase. And then beyond just cleaning up your head, this tool also has a couple other cool uses. If you tie sand worms and you normally mess with a lighter, this is just a little cleaner and easier way to go. Fire that thing up, just bring it in there, just barely tack it, and man, no smoke. It's just perfectly finished, just like that. Then if you like to tie with deer hair, when you complete your fly, a lot of times you'll have some little stubs in there. This is a great way to come in there and just knock off those little stubs right in the eyelet of your hook, so you can get your clean tie-in point. So great tool, great flies. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know. And if you're interested in purchasing the materials to tie this fly, or you need one of these new cotter tools, they are available. You can shop us at houseoffly.us or also flyproject.us. Those are going to be directing toward each other, so whichever way you go, you will find us. Tight lines.